Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Truth Hertz Show. Got an interesting topic lined up for you today. Tomorrow I'm going to have, I got to call him after the show, in fact, and confirm to make sure he's coming on, because my guests seem to have a habit of not showing up. But tomorrow I have Hank Albarelli coming on. He's the author of A Terrible Mistake. It's on CIA Cold War experiments, such as MK Ultra and a lot of other sinister things that went on in that era. Of course, many sinister things continue to go on today, but understanding today's sinister actions of the CIA, it's vital to understand what they've done in the past, to put it in perspective. There's a great many people who can't admit that evil things have gone on in the past, let alone in the present. So if you can show them the historical perspective, show them that official government documents admit, that these things have gone on in the past, it's much more difficult for them to weasel their way out and deny that these things are going on in the present. So anyway, that is the guest set up for tomorrow. Hopefully he will show. Anyway, today, important topic. We're going to be discussing Mr. Ratzinger. Those of you that don't know Mr. Ratzinger is now Pope Benedict XVI. We're going to be talking about his globalist aspirations. Mr. Benedict is a rabid, hardcore New World Order advocate. So we're going to be talking about that and his role in helping establish global government. Because the globalists don't just want a world government. They don't just want a world monetary system, a world bank, a world court, a world this, a world that. They want a world religion. And Mr. Vatican himself intends to emerge as the head of it. So, thought I heard the music coming in. I guess not. So that's what we'll be talking about today, folks. We're going to look at what this man has been up to. It's incredible stuff. If you're familiar with, the history of the Dark Ages, it ought to make your hair stand on end to see that this man does have his sights on global power. Global religious and political power. The Vatican isn't just interested in religious power. That's scary enough. But no, they're interested in political power. They always have been. All during the Dark Ages, they controlled the kings of Europe. And they fully intend to do the same thing again. And the actions that are being taken as we speak by this Pope and his predecessor and several before him, it's very frightening. It's very frightening stuff. They don't hide it. They're very open about it. They intend to emerge as the uncontested spiritual masters of the world, and political as well. Anyway, we'll talk about that. When we get back, we'll be quoting from their own documents that attest to that fact. So stick with us, folks. Dominus vobiscum. I make no apologies, folks, for poking fun at religion when all that religion ever does is screw people's lives up. We're going to do a lot of poking fun today at religion. I'm sorry, I can't stand it. It's an abomination in my book. I hold religion in higher contempt than I do the government. It's a sickening, disgusting collection of filth. And right at the top of that heap of crap stands the Vatican. It's a most unholy alliance, folks. Church and state. History attests to this fact over and over again. Whenever you get religion and government blended together, you get absolute disaster. And this is what this current Pope, and indeed most popes throughout all of history, have aspired to. And yet, we're headed for the same thing again. This is how it was all during the Dark Ages, all across Europe. The Vatican pulled its strings, and every king in Europe danced to its tune. Very few were the exceptions. And whenever a king did rise up against the Vatican, they met with a terrible fate. They would either have their kingdom overthrown from within because their subjects were afraid that they weren't going to be able to go to heaven because the Vatican would excommunicate the whole nation, or, the Vatican would impose horrific punishments on the king, penance, if you will, for him to make reparations with the Vatican. It's incredible, the power that they have wielded, and they want, once again, to regain that power. Anyway, whoring with the kings of Europe is not new for the Vatican. It's going on today under Benedict XVI on an alarming scale, but again, it's not new. Most of the Vatican's history is permeated with the playing of this game, the church and state flirtatious game. Not only, never mind flirtatious, outright intercourse, if you will, between these two enterprises. That's all the Dark Ages was one ugly story after another. You hear about the Inquisition and the Crusades, and that was those were a couple of the ugly consequences of the marriage of these two criminals. The state usually carried out the Crusades. It wasn't the Vatican itself that did it. In fact, it was always the state power. The Vatican would promise all kinds of blessings from God, instant access to heaven for anyone who participated in a crusade. So think about it. If you're a hardened criminal, in prison, locked away in a dungeon because you've murdered somebody or stolen from somebody or whatever, and now you're promised your freedom and instant access to heaven if you participate in a crusade. I mean, you've been a murderer, your whole life anyway, right? If that's what you're in prison for. You don't mind killing. You have no aversion to it. Now someone's going to give you a license to kill. You're not going to be accountable for it. They're going to give you a free sword. Go out and have a field day. Of course. You're going to be given your freedom and total amnesty to commit murder. Why not? Especially if you're a Roman Catholic to begin with. You don't care about killing a bunch of Protestants, right? This is how it worked. That's what the Crusades were, folks. And, the Inquisition, the same thing. The Dominican friar would come in and launch an inquisition against you because some neighbor that didn't like you spread a rumor about you that you were engaging in heretical activities, spreading heretical, damnable heresies about the Catholic Church. So the friar would come in and, or one of his emissaries or whatever would knock on your door in the middle of the night and drag you off. And you were screwed from there. It didn't matter what you said or didn't say. You were done. That's it. Go read the Libro Nero. This was on display in the Vatican Library for a long time until, I don't know, about a decade or two ago, they took it off display, and now it's locked away in their archives, probably never to see the light of day again because it was getting a lot of attention, unwanted attention. They didn't want people knowing what, was contained in this book. But it was basically the handbook for the Inquisitor. And it, put a strong emphasis on torture. Torture has ever been found to be the most effective means of gaining a true confession. And, it instructed that if the person doesn't confess to the crime that he's been convicted of, and they wouldn't tell you what you were being convicted of. They would drag you in and tell you to confess under torture. And so if you didn't know the lie that your neighbor made up for you, they would torture you until you confessed it. The book states if they do not confess to the crime they're convicted of, continue the torture until they do, because they're guilty. They've been, they've already been turned in as guilty. No question that the person who turned you in might be lying. No, their testimony is unquestionable. So the problem isn't with the person you're torturing. It's not with the person who convicted or condemned the person or exposed the person. The problem is with the person being tortured. They're just lying. If they confess only in part, that shows that they're capable of being guilty of all. So consider them fully guilty. You should read the thing. It's unbelievable. It's all over the internet. Just Google it. Libro Nero. Unbelievable. Anyway, but here we are once again, folks, under the pontificate of the current Pope, headed down the same dark road that this religious fraudulent institution took us down during the Dark Ages. We're headed down that same dark road again. Benedict XVI, Mr. Ratzinger, fully intends to reestablish the power and control, the despotism that the papacy enjoyed in the Dark Ages. And by the way, if anybody wants to call in during the broadcast, Catholic, non-Catholic alike, I don't care. I'd like to hear from you. The number to do that is 512-904-8014. Again, 512-904-8014. Share your comments, concerns, questions, gripes, you name it. Folks, whether you're Catholic or not, especially if you're Catholic, this should concern you. I would hope I wouldn't get any calls from apologists. If I do, fine, call me up, let's debate. But I would hope no Catholic apologist would try to defend their current pope's, lust for power. I mean, that's frightening stuff. It's not good for Catholics as well as anybody else. All right, guys, short break. Stick with us. Be right back. All right, folks. Welcome back to Truth Hurts Radio. The Catholic Church has always taught that its head, the Pope, is the supreme ruler on earth above all kings and other secular rulers. And this idea has been upheld by the most widely respected Catholic theologians throughout papal history. It's been declared and upheld by Catholic councils, Vatican councils. Let's look at a few examples. Speaking of the Pope and his authority, one well-respected 18th century Catholic author, Lucius Ferraris, made this statement, and this is from his Papa, Article 2, Volume 6, 1772, pages 25 to 29, excerpts from pages 25 to 29. Listen to this stuff. Most Catholics, never mind Protestants, most Catholics, or never mind non-Catholics, I should say, but even most Catholics are not aware of what their own church actually teaches regarding the Pope and his authority. But just listen to this. This is official Catholic teaching, by the way. This work, and indeed all the works of Lucius Ferraris, are heavily endorsed by the Catholic Encyclopedia. Here's what he said. The Pope is, as it were, God on earth, sole sovereign of the faithful of Christ, chief King of kings. King of kings. There you go. They view their Pope, and the Pope views himself, all popes view themselves, as the King of kings, the ruler of all kings. All political rulers are, under their thumb. Anyway, he goes on, having plenitude of power to whom has been entrusted by the omnipotent God, direction not only of the earthly but also of the heavenly kingdom. The Pope is of so great authority and power that he can modify, explain, or interpret even divine law. So here, the Pope places himself above God as well as above all kings. The Pope can modify divine law since his power is not of man but of God, says who? Whatever the Lord himself and Redeemer is said to do, that his vicar does. I mean, this is absolutely unbelievable. So apparently he has power over man and God, over all kings. Unbelievable, folks. And again, whether you believe in God or not, it doesn't matter. For someone to claim they have more power than God, or as much power as God anyway, obviously this guy's on a power trip. This is official Roman Catholic doctrine. I'm not telling you that they teach something that they don't. Not reading into anything. I'm reading from their own sources. Very authoritative Roman Catholic sources. And as always, I have to make this disclaimer. This isn't an indictment against Roman Catholic people, folks. By the way, I see I got a caller coming in. His name is David from Idaho. Hold on one sec, Dave. I'll get to you. This is not an indictment against Catholic people, folks. It's an indictment against the Vatican itself, the Roman Catholic system. Just like when I talk about the CIA. I'm not saying that all CIA employees are evil. A great many of them are ignorant of what the CIA is all about. They have the most sincere intentions, and my gripe isn't with them. It's with the institution at the highest levels. Anyway, I just had to say that because I'm sure, a lot of Roman Catholics are going to be offended, but hey, I don't call the radio show Truth Hurts for nothing. Anyway, let's go to Dave in Idaho. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Good morning. Sounds like you're talking about the IRS codes.
The IRS what?
Codes.
Oh, you mean the 501c3 thing?
Yeah.
yeah, that's a beauty. Yeah,
well,
I'm an equal opportunity.
I
was just going to say I'm an equal opportunity condemner. I don't just attack the Vatican. I'll be doing shows on Protestantism and indeed all religion. But in any case, yeah, go ahead, Dave.
Well, the declaration of guilt and the torture part reminds me of the man that drove his plane into the IRS building.
Oh, you mean down in Austin?
Yeah, in his letter he talked about being forced to sign that you understand the code exactly.
Right. I don't think it was a plane. I think it was like an SUV or something. He drove his truck into the headquarters there in Austin. Yeah.
Well, he wrote a note.
I'm sorry, what was that, Dave? You're not coming in too clear. You seem to be breaking up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you read his letter?
No, I didn't actually. But, a lot of that stuff, we don't even know what really was said. I mean, they're going to play on this thing and propagandize it and use it for all kinds of power grab purposes. Who knows if he even wrote the thing or if he did write a letter, what he actually said. You know what I'm saying? But what did the letter say?
Well, it talked about you have to sign that you understand the IRS code, and not 3 lawyers will understand it.
Oh, yeah. IRS agents themselves don't understand it. Yeah. They have some agents that specialize just in certain areas. What's that?
Heard it was torture or some sort of torturous regime that would require you to sign that and say you understand. Right.
Yeah, nobody can understand that. They don't understand it themselves. Like I said, there's a clip on the net. I love it on YouTube. It shows I think it was the former IRS commissioner. Somebody asked him, what law really makes us liable for the income tax? What law is there that compels us to pay it? And he's like, you see, he couldn't answer it. So his little sidekick there, this woman steps forward and she's like, oh, well, you can just go to our website. There's all kinds of information there, and we can, discount those who say that, the income tax is a fraud, and it certainly is not. But she didn't answer the question. She just referred you to mounds and mounds of information on the net that really doesn't say anything. It's unbelievable. They can't answer a straightforward question. Anyway, did you have any comment?
There was an...
Do you have any comment about
there was another anomaly with the letter.
What's that?
And that was, it looked like it was typed, and that it was copied somehow.
Right.
And no one has addressed that.
Yeah, like I said, I don't even believe it. I don't believe any of it. It's a bunch of crap. Just pure crap.
With the typewriter,
Right.
With the typewriter is what it looks like.
Yeah, and who even uses a typewriter anymore?
Who does that nowadays?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, great show. I'm having a great morning. listening to you. Appreciate your program.
Excellent. All right. Thanks for calling, Dave. All right, folks. Yeah. At some future point, I'm going to do a show on that whole fiasco, the IRS and their phony income tax fraud. What a scam that is. Anyway, yeah, it does tie in with this subject, like he pointed out, the 501c3 fiasco. How anybody can be a part of these religious institutions that call themselves churches, I don't understand it. I really don't. With all the corruption, the obvious scams that have been going on, the sex scandals, and on it goes. I don't know how anybody could be a part of those things and support them. I really don't. But anyway, short break, folks. Let's be right back. All right, folks. Back to the Hertz Show. A friend of mine just texted me on Skype and alerted me to the fact that I guess it was a small plane that was rammed into that IRS building. I thought it was an SUV for some reason. That's interesting. Didn't even realize that. I don't even pay attention to that stuff because, number one, it's either not true, they're just making this stuff up so they can pass more oppressive, rights-trampling laws, or if it is true that this guy really did snap and do this, they're going to, take advantage of it and lie about it, like this phony letter, obviously, and have it say radical stuff to make anybody who questions the IRS look like a fanatic and a potential crazy person like this guy and dangerous and a threat to society, on and on, blah, blah, blah. It's just all BS. So I don't even pay attention to it. Then again, I don't pay attention to much of what's in the news anyway. It's all propaganda. It's either propaganda or it's just BS, entertainment for the masses, like the Michael Jackson death. And, they just exploit that to the hilt as a distraction. It's so disgusting. What a filthy mess. Pravda, in the heat of the Cold War, had nothing up on our media, let me tell you, as far as lies and scams go. Big joke. Quite frankly, though, I don't advocate violence, but quite frankly, I'm surprised that we haven't seen things like this on a much grander scale. With the abuses that have been going on, especially since the bailout. It's unbelievable. I really am amazed at, I guess that's another a testament to the power of Prozac. People are just in a coma, don't even care that they're getting screwed over anymore. It's unfreaking believable. But anyway, let's move on to our discussion of Mr. Ratzinger. From the same author as the last quote I cited, Lucius Ferraris, again, a very well-respected Roman Catholic author, in his Prompta Bibliotheca, which the Catholic Encyclopedia refers to as a veritable encyclopedia of religious knowledge and a precious mine of information, okay? So there's great respect for this work by the most authoritative Catholic sources. Let's read from this the Prompta Bibliotheca. Hold on one second here. Got to scroll down. Okay, here we go. He said, the Pope is of so great dignity and so exalted that he is not a mere man, but as it were God and the vicar of God. The Pope is of such lofty and supreme dignity that, properly speaking, he has not been established in any rank of dignity, but rather has been placed upon the very summit of all ranks of dignities. The Pope is called Most Holy because he is rightfully presumed to be such. I'm reading these quotes so you can see where the Catholic Church actually stands in regards to the alleged power that the Pope has. So that when we talk momentarily about the current Pope's push for global power, sharing in the control over the New World Order, you'll know how scary of a thought that is, of a prospect that is, when you realize the power that this man claims and his whole church claims for himself. It's unbelievable. We need to be alarmed over what this man is up to. Anyway, this quote continues. The Pope alone is deservedly called by the name Most Holy because he alone is the vicar of Christ. He is likewise the divine monarch and supreme emperor. And here goes that title again, King of Kings. Hence, the Pope is crowned with a triple crown as King of heaven and of earth and of the lower regions. Moreover, the superiority and the power of the Pope is by no means pertain only to heavenly things, to earthly things, and things under the earth, but are even over the angels, than whom he is greater. Ooh! So that if it were possible that the angels might err in the faith, or might think contrary to the faith, they could be judged and excommunicated by the Pope. Oh, so we can even excommunicate angels. Today at noon, I want all of you to face Rome and bow in reverent obedience to the Pope today, okay? Don't forget, write it down. Anyway, one last line here. For he is of so great dignity and power that he forms one and the same tribunal with Christ. All hail the holiness. All hail his holiness, Pope Benedict XVI. Unfreaking what a disgusting bunch of crap. This is unbelievable. Even my personal favorite, George Bush, even he never claimed such power for himself. But this guy goes way beyond what any secular leader even dare claim about himself. Do you realize the pompousness, the arrogance of this little piece of trash? Think about it. I'm sorry, folks, but no, I'm not sorry. I don't make an apology for this. Anybody who has faith in a religion like this, or for that matter, any religion, but, any religious leader that puts himself on a pedestal like that, and people who fall for it, you have my sympathies. Like I said, most Catholics don't even know this stuff, and if they did, I'm sure they would leave in a heartbeat that cult that affords such powers and makes such claims about their leader. This is just disgusting. Anyway, let's move on. It doesn't stop there. Roman Catholic Code of Law has this to say. Every cleric must obey the Pope, even if he commands what is evil. And clearly, many popes have commanded evil things. Even if he commands what is evil, every cleric must obey the Pope, for no one may judge the Pope. This is a statement made by Pope Innocent III from 1198 to 1216 AD. So nobody can say that, oh, you're making this stuff up, you're exaggerating, blah, blah, blah. This is a Pope saying this. This isn't just some run-of-the-mill Catholic author. This is a Pope who made this statement. Speaking infallibly, by today's standards, every cleric must obey the Pope even if he commands what is evil. No one may judge the Pope. Dear God, who can possibly fall for this slop? Anyway, there's more. 1 second here. It just gets better and better. The first see, or Vatican, is judged by no one. It is the right of the Roman pontiff, or the Pope, himself alone to judge those who hold the highest civil office in a state. It is the Pope's prerogative, they're saying, alone to judge those who hold the highest office of a state. Can you believe this? So not only is no one to judge him, but he can judge anyone he wants, including political leaders. He claims primacy, folks, supremacy over all rulers. Do you understand, once again, how dangerous it is for the Catholic Church to be showing an interest in power, wanting a partnership in power in the New World Order, when such claims about him like this are being made? This is a return to the Dark Ages. That's what we're heading for. Then the quote goes on, there is neither repeal nor recourse against a decision or decree of the Roman pontiff, again, the Pope. There is neither repeal nor recourse against a decision. Once he makes it, it's final, and all must reverently obey. All rulers, as well as plebs, as well as the peasantry. That's from James A. Corridon and Thomas J. Green, who are the editors of The Code of Canon Law, Paulist Press, 1985, Canons 1404, 1405, and 333. There you go, folks. Check it out yourself. I'm not making this up. This is official Roman Catholic doctrine. These statements have been made by popes themselves. So, are you feeling good that the Pope wants to share in a partnership of power in the New World Order? Oh, doesn't that get you all excited? Unfreaking real. Let's look at the political philosophy a little further of the Vatican. For popes to claim to have authority above all secular leaders is bad enough, but the situation becomes even more grave when we realize the totalitarian type of philosophy embraced by the papacy. Perhaps no one has summed up its philosophy better than Pope Pius IX. He reigned back in the 19th century. This guy was a piece of work. He's the one, by the way, who officially declared the Vatican dogma of infallibility. That when the Pope speaks ex cathedra, from Peter's chair, that he's infallible. Even if he contradicts everything else that every previous Pope stated, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And even if the Pope after him contradicts him and everything he said, it doesn't matter. At that given moment, he's infallible. So, we'll talk about that some more when we get back, folks. This stuff, get your barf bags out. It's going to make you puke. Certainly makes me puke. Be right back. All right, folks. Back on Truth Hurts. Let's go on to this quote now from Pius IX. In his encyclical letter of August 15, 1854, he stated, "The absurd and erroneous doctrines or ravings in defense of the liberty of conscience are a most pestilential error, a pest of all others most to be dreaded in a state." Imagine that. Again, this is the guy who invented the dogma of infallibility. And this is an official encyclical that he wrote. Therefore, according to Roman Catholic doctrine, this is an infallible teaching of the Catholic Church. So when he says that the principles of liberty of conscience are a most pestilential error, he's stating an official Roman Catholic teaching. Liberty of conscience. To think freely. The Catholic Church condemns the right of a person to think freely for themselves. You are to think in accordance with what the Church teaches, i.e. with what the popes teach and command. That's it. You're to be, this is amazing because so many shows have been done over the years, exposing cults like Jim Jones. Of course, they don't tell you it was a CIA operation. I got a show coming up on that sometime. But, exposing Heaven's Gate and on and on and on. But they don't talk about the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is a cult, but then again, all churches are cults. But, the Catholic Church is a particularly dangerous cult because its head is a totalitarian tyrant who demands strict and unwavering obedience by all, not just members of the church and its clergy and whatnot, but everybody on the freaking planet. Why is that not labeled as a cult? How come people don't warn Catholics to come out of that system and to deprogram them and talk about how they've been brainwashed? This is official Roman Catholic dogma. I'll tell you why they don't. Because the Roman Catholic Church is powerfully wealthy. That's why. Small little cults are easy to expose. They're not powerful. They're not wealthy. The Roman Catholic Church is the single richest, according to the CIA fact book, and who can believe that? But nevertheless, I don't think they're in error on this one. The CIA fact book states that the Vatican Bank has the most holdings of any bank in the world, apparently including the Rothschilds. And that might very well be so. The wealth of the Vatican, folks, is eye-popping. And then some people will say, oh, wait a minute, what about all those convents? The nuns don't even have enough money to buy shoes for themselves. They don't have money. Oh, really? Do you think the Vatican cares about those little nuns with no shoes? They don't give a frog's fat fanny. But take a trip sometime to the Vatican and look at the gold and silver and jewel-decked palaces at the Vatican and tell me they don't have money. Holy mackerel. There is no more There's no institution on the planet, folks, that has more money than the Vatican. All right? That's just a fact. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know how people can fall for this chicanery. But let's move on here. This same Pope, Pius the Ninth, in his encyclical letter of December 8th, 1864, once again, speaking infallibly by today's Catholic standards, he anathematized or declared as heretics those who assert the liberty of conscience and religious worship, and all such as maintain that the Church may not employ force. So he reinforced his previous declaration that liberty of conscience is evil, and now it's heresy. But then he went on to say that those who assert liberty of freedom of worship. So you must worship according to the Pope, according to the Catholic Church, according to their dictates, and such as maintain that the Church may not employ force. So now you're a heretic if you say that the Church may not employ force. This is akin to the ADL stating that, if you say anything against Zionism, you're anti-Semitic. You must not say anything against anybody who's of the Jewish persuasion, or you're committing a hate crime. Don't you see that tyrants always try to pass laws that suppress criticism of themselves? Because they've got a lot to hide. That's why they do it. The Vatican is no exception, folks. They've been doing it all along. And here they are. This is a Pope speaking infallibly, saying that, you're a heretic if you talk about religious freedom and say that the Church may not employ force. They want to employ force. They've got a long history of employing force, and they want to be able to employ it again to force you. You see, they have to employ force because if you look at it with a critical, open mind, you'll see the whole thing's a fraud, and you're not going to want to follow it. The only reason why so many people do follow it is because they've never looked at it with a critical mind. As I said, and let me reaffirm, most Catholics do not know this type of crap that the Church teaches. They don't know. They're never taught it in their catechism. All they would have to do is do some reading. Read some of the early Church Fathers, or even some of the more modern ones like Lucius Ferraris. It's right there. It's public record, but nobody reads. Nobody pays attention. Anyway, in this same document called Quanta Cura, this encyclical of 1864, December 8th, speaking infallibly, once again, by today's Catholic standards, Pius IX went on to say this, and I quote, "These false and perverse opinions of democracy and individual freedom are so much the more detestable by as much as they hinder and banish that salutary influence which the Catholic Church, by the institution and command of her divine author, ought freely to exercise, even to the consummation of the world, not only over individual men, but nations, peoples, and sovereigns." So there you go. This man claims authority over everything, the entire planet, even to the consummation of the world. In other words, let the whole world crumble, rather than deny the power that the Pope has, that he was rightfully given by God. It's freaking unbelievable, folks. You're going to tell me that this is not a cult? Are you going to tell me that this isn't a bunch of crap? How, in God's name, can people possibly swallow this garbage? And yet you are required, even though most Catholics don't know this, the truth is they would be excommunicated. They would not allow to remain Roman Catholic if they were publicly to declare that they don't believe this garbage. If they were to say, that's ridiculous, the Pope doesn't have absolute authority, I deny such teachings, they would be excommunicated. In previous centuries, they'd be murdered. And if they have their way, they'll murder you again if you deny this. Unbelievable. Anyway, with all this in mind now, let's come more up to date here. Starting with John Paul II, before we start talking about our current so-called holiness there in the Vatican. John Paul was another globalist who sought global power. In essence, I'm just trying to figure out I didn't even specify this in my notes. Sorry, folks. I really need to read my notes before I go on the air. I thought I had this one all set to go. This is a quote from Malachi Martin's 1990 book. I'm trying to remember the name of it now. Vicars of... No, that's not it either. Son of a gun. Anyway, Malachi Martin was a very authoritative Vatican insider. In fact, probably the top Vatican insider next to the Pope himself, very high-ranking Jesuit priest. So, when he wrote, he knew what he was talking about. And in his 1990 book, and for some reason the name escapes me and I didn't write it down here, shame on me. Isn't that crazy? I've quoted from this book so many times and I just can't. Oh, The Keys of This Blood. That's it. In this book, he made this statement. In essence, Pope John Paul II, and I tell you what, I don't want to talk over the music here. I'll pick it up when we get back. Stick with us, folks. Welcome to the second hour of Truth Hurts, folks. I believe the show's half over, and I'm only on page 3 of my notes here. If I have to, and it looks like I probably will have to, I'll pick up with part 2 of this on Monday. Tomorrow I got a guest. Assuming my guest actually shows up, that is. If not, I'll finish this tomorrow. I'll be calling the guest after the broadcast and confirming, so hopefully he will be here, but I'm not going to get my hopes up. But anyway, yeah, I'm probably going to have to split this up into 2 parts because I don't want to skip any of it. This is important stuff. So let's go on with this Malachi Martin quote from Keys of This Blood. He said, in essence, Pope John Paul seems to perceive what the New World Order should be. The pontiff is not only a calculated blueprint for the New World Order, but it is determined that he shall lead it. He determined to endure his pontificate with an international profile and among leaders and nations, indicating a position for himself as a special leader among leaders, because in the competition he plans to emerge the victor. Martin later went on to say that John Paul II, quote, insists that men have no reliable hope of creating a stable geopolitical system unless it is on the basis of Roman Catholic Christianity. I'm giving you some background here with John Paul II to see how inundated he was in this lust for world domination and sharing in, the partnership of power in the New World Order. Of course, he didn't view it as sharing. He wanted to be at the helm of the whole thing. But nevertheless, this has been the goal of popes for a long time now. Well, it's been the goal of popes always. But in the modern manifestation of the lust for world domination, since Weishaupt, the New World Order, every pope since then pretty much has called it by name, the New World Order. They talked about it, mentioned how they intend to play a leading role or the leading role in it. And so, with all of this background, by the time I get to talking about Benedict and what he's currently pushing for, this will all be in its proper perspective. Anyway, speaking about the view of Pope John Paul II regarding the 2 different models for a New World Order, one held by Russia, this book, keep in mind, was written before the fall of the Iron Curtain, and the other by the United States, Martin wrote, quote, the primary difficulty for Pope John Paul II in both of these models for the New World Order is that neither of them is rooted in the moral laws of human behavior revealed by God through the teaching of Christ as proposed by Christ's church, meaning, of course, the Catholic Church. He is adamant on one capital point. No system will ensure and guarantee the rights and freedoms of the individual if it is not based on those laws. This is the backbone principle of the New World Order envisioned by the pontiff. Again, it's all about power, folks. And so Martin was saying here that, what was being proposed by Russia and the United States, it's no good. Only the Pope's solutions are going to work. only his framework will succeed in overpowering. All right, folks, for the short break, we're right back.
You must all bow to me, or I will burn you at the stake.
On October 28, 1978, during his ceremonial coronation, John Paul II addressed the world in 10 different languages with the following message: Open wide the doors of Christ. To his saving power, open the boundaries of states, economic and political systems, the vast fields of culture and civilization and development. Do not be afraid. I want your support in this, my mission. I'm not afraid, no, but you're not getting my support, buddy. It quickly became clear, commented Malachi Martin, that John Paul would not confine his message, his influence, or his leadership to ecclesiastical matters. Those who had begun to worry that His Holiness intended to insert himself into their temporal affairs were apparently right to do so. Yeah, his whole pontificate revolved around increasing Vatican power and influence around the world, folks, en route to the New World Order. And now Mr. Benedict has picked up the torch, as we'll see later in the broadcast, or tomorrow or Monday, I don't know, whenever I get to it, whenever I can get through these notes here. Anyway, not long after his coronation, John Paul II drew up a 24,000-word document called Redemptor Hominis, speaking infallibly. Speaking of this document, Martin wrote, indeed, the note that dominated and animated that encyclical document was John Paul's insistence that the hard, intractable problems of the world, hunger, violation of human dignity and human rights, war and violence, economic oppression, political persecution, any and all of these could be solved only by acceptance and implementation of the message of Christ's revelation announced by the papacy and the Roman Catholic Church. The only solution to man's problems is the Roman Catholic Church. Well, why didn't anybody tell me this before? That's it. Apparently, all we need to do is just pay attention to whatever the Pope says, follow what he says, and my God, the whole world will... Geez, we might even have eternal life right now. Yes, just follow what the Pope says. And the great Chinese search for the fountain of youth is all over. Everything will be solved. There'll never be another rape, murder, theft, you name it. There won't even be a need. Everybody will be rich and comfortable. We'll all be rich like the Pope. Apparently, that's the answer to our problems, folks. So call the Vatican today and ask them what you must do to help ensure that the whole world follows the Pope, so all our problems will be solved. What a bunch of bunk. Martin did not mince words, folks, in describing just how pervasive the control that this emerging New World Order, influenced heavily by the papacy, of course, will have over our lives, unless a stop is put to it. But notice what he said. This is unbelievable. This is probably the most shocking quote in the entire book. When I read this, my jaw dropped. He said, willing or not, ready or not, we are all involved in an all-out, no-holds-barred global competition about who will establish the first one-world system of government that has ever existed in the Society of Nations. Well, I'll argue it's not the first, but anyways, it is about who will hold and wield the dual power of authority and control over each of us as individuals and over all of us together as a community, over the entire then 6 billion people. Now that it has started, there is no way that it can be reversed or called off. Once the competition has been decided, the world and all that's in it, our way of life as individuals and as citizens of the nations, our families and our jobs, our trade and commerce and money, our educational systems and our religions and our cultures, even the badges of our national identity, all will have been powerfully and radically altered forever. No one can be accepted or exempted from its effects. No sector of our lives will remain untouched. And John Paul and his Catholic Church, his Vatican, intended to emerge as the central source of power over it all. John Paul II never wavered, folks, in his support of the New World Order or the United Nations. As late as January 1st, 2004, over 25 years after his coronation, CNN's website carried an article entitled "Pope Calls for a New World Order," which stated, and I quote, "Pope John Paul II rang in the new year on Thursday with a renewed call for peace in the Middle East and Africa and the creation of a new world order. He stressed that to bring about peace, there needs to be a new respect for international law and the creation of a new international order based on the goals of the United Nations." Interesting. So, on the one hand, the Catholic Church is saying New World Order needs to be based on the Vatican and its teachings, but now here's the previous Pope saying it needs to be based on international law and the goals of the United Nations. Well, as long as he's the overseer of all that, I guess. Doesn't matter. This is unbelievable, folks. Unflippin' believable. So the question is, will history repeat itself? Will we return, essentially, to the Dark Ages, with church and state fully reunited? Apparently so, folks, if Rome has its way. The current pope is no exception. He's all for it, too, just like his predecessor. But let's notice what one concerned alert Catholic author, Penny Lernoux, wrote in her 1989 book, The People of God. She said, "John Paul's Vatican longs for the past. The Pope wishes to restore an authoritarian church model based on that of the Middle Ages." This is one alert Roman Catholic who certainly knows what's been going on. She said that Pope, and indeed this Pope as well, wants to return to the Middle Ages, to the Dark Ages. An authoritarian Pope who longs for the past, wants to go backward, not forward, back to the Dark Ages. Another Pope who pushed openly for a New World Order, calling it by name, was Pope Paul VI, who wrote in his Popularum Progressio, sounds like a spaghetti sauce, on March 26, 1967, and I quote, "Who can fail to see the need and importance of coming..." Well, you know what? There's a break. I don't want to read into the music, so stick with us, folks. Be right back. All right, folks, welcome back. Before the break, I was talking about this quote here from Pope Paul VI, dating back to 1967. Here's what he said. "Who can fail to see the need and importance of coming to the establishment of a world authority capable of taking effective action on the juridical and political planes? Delegates to international organizations, public officials, gentlemen of the press, teachers and educators, all of you must realize that you have your part to play in the construction of a new world order." There you go, another Pope from the past few decades who was in favor of and pushing for the new world order. Okay, with all that background now, seeing all these popes that have talked about their lust for power, how their authority extends beyond just the Catholic Church. They claim authority over rulers, emperors, kings, you name it. They rule the whole world, and that their authority is infallible, and that you must not question them or judge them. They can judge and question anybody they want, but you can't judge or question them. Actually, I made a statement earlier that even Bush didn't make such claims for himself, but he did, come to think of it. He made a statement once, well, that's a great thing about being president. No, how did he say it? I don't think I need to answer to anybody. Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was. The great thing about being president is, I don't really need to answer to anybody. There might be those who have to answer to me, but I don't really need to answer to anybody. Yeah. Freaking believable. So I guess he did make that claim for himself. Didn't say his authority was above God and all men, but, it's pretty much implied in there, wouldn't you say? Anyway, Benedict XVI. Now let's move on to him. Has there been a change? Has this Pope seen the error of his ways and realizes that he doesn't want to take us back to the Dark Ages and wants to turn the church around in the opposite direction? Oh, hell no. Oh, no. All popes, folks, all popes have wanted absolute power. And this man is no exception, and he has come out and called global government by name as well. The New World Order. Benedict XVI, John Paul's successor, as you should come to expect, expressed the same warm and tender sentiments about creating a new world order. For instance, according to Yahoo News, on Christmas Day in 2005, he urged humanity to, quote, unite against terrorism. Ew, isn't that interesting? Gee, I guess nobody informed Mr. Benedict that the whole terrorism war is a fraud and that 9/11 was an inside job. Or maybe, just maybe, the man knows and likes that kind of stuff. I would bet the latter. But anyway, he called everyone to, quote, unite against terrorism, poverty. Now, that's a real kick in the butt, isn't it? This guy is concerned about combating poverty. Well, Mr. Benedict, why don't you sell your $1,000 gazillion tiara there, that solid gold little crown you like to wear in your head, decked with all kinds of precious gems? Why don't you sell that, and you could probably alleviate poverty in 15 third world countries just with that sale alone. That's a good start. Alleviate poverty. Get that. Flip out of my face. Anyway, it continues. And environmental blight, and called for a new world order to correct economic imbalances. Oh, man. If this man was so enlightened by visions from God, you think the guy would know, and of course he does know, but, you think he would know that, or would do something about it, the fact that the reason why there's economic imbalances is because of the New World Order. Those pushing for it are the ones who are creating the economic mess that this entire planet is in. Oh, but no, the solution to the problem is not to take power away from these elite scum. It's to give them more power and set up their long-sought-for New World Order. Unbelievable. To help bring about the New World Order, in which the Vatican, of course, intends to play a major role, Benedict has employed all sorts of sleazy tactics, and he's working on every front, folks. Inside the church, he has continued his decades-long campaign to expel liberals and stack the deck with conservatives. In this context, that simply means he's getting rid of the Vatican II-oriented cardinals and bishops and replacing them with Dark Age philosophy cardinals and bishops who share the same philosophy that he has. Also, all across Europe, he's working to reestablish a Catholic continent so that the papacy can have rule over, European powers as it did during the Dark Ages. Among non-Catholic Christians, he seeks to draw worshippers under papal authority. Not like, the Vatican II philosophy, which states that, all religions have validity and let everyone stay in their own religion, their own church or whatever. No, this Pope is taking us back to the Dark Ages, even more so than John Paul II did. He's calling for all, faithful people in other religions to abandon them and become Roman Catholic. He's calling it, like the popes of the Dark Ages, the only true faith. In the world, he's leveling a strong attack against secularism and godlessness He's on a power trip, folks. And to Islam, he has unmistakably shown a resistance, a toughness that promises to grow stronger. You know, he's jumping the anti-terrorism phony bandwagon, going along with the phony, you know, post 9/11 mantras. What a joke. What Pope Benedict has done, in fact, folks, is position the Roman Catholic Church to fulfill its prophesied role in coming European and world events. The goal is power, plain and simple. Anyway, let's look at some of the initial moves that he's made in this direction more closely. After assuming office, Benedict XVI began placing his hand-picked conservative troops in the top spots within the Catholic Curia. He eliminated 2 senior positions and chose a notoriously shy, controllable man for his old job, prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, which, of course, is the modern name for the office of the Inquisition. He switched out the cardinal in charge of Vatican relations with the developing world, replaced the Vatican's long-standing press officer with a Jesuit priest, and shuffled the Vatican city government and foreign policy offices. Major, major changes. He replaced the Vatican Secretary of State with his trusted former deputy in the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, a man who would help him clean house, if you will, at the Curia and Catholicize the masses. He's on a mission, folks. He's on a mission from God. So with us, be right back after the break. Hello, welcome back to Truth Hertz Radio. I'm here to tell you that it's not too late to become a Roman Catholic, so go to your local Catholic church today. Anyway, here's an interesting quote from Benedict XVI. I can get away with making fun of Italians because I'm Italian. Benedict the 16th made this statement, folks. I, Bishop of Rome and pastor of the Universal Church, send to you, age-old Europe, a cry full of love. Whatever. He made this statement on July 24th, 2005, quoting his predecessor, John Paul II. Return to yourself, whatever that means. Be yourself. Discover your origins. Revive your roots. Revive those authentic values that made your history glorious and your presence beneficial among the other continents. You see, this is what every tyrant always does before he lunges for that deadly bite. You pump up their ego. He's stroking their ego. So then he can pounce on them with his little power grab. In March of 2006, the current Pope chose to drop Patriarch of the West from his list of official titles. You know, the Pope bears many titles like King of Kings. One of them is Patriarch of the West. He dropped that as one of his titles. Now, why do you suppose he did that? Think about it. I'll tell you why. Because he doesn't want to just be the Patriarch of the West, folks. He wants to be the Patriarch of the North, South, East, and West of all the world. The Eastern Orthodox Synod said the move implied that the Catholic Church still sought universal jurisdiction of the Bishop of Rome over the entire Church, and not just over the West, of course, over the entire world, but, clearly the Eastern Orthodox Church recognizes that. They know what this was all about. He wouldn't just do that for no reason. There is a reason, and it's obvious what that reason is. This Pope, as you might guess, decided to retain the titles Vicar of Christ and Supreme Pontiff of the Universal Church, of course. He didn't remove those titles. Anything that implies universality of his power and authority, yeah, he kept that. But that one title that just limited him to the West, yeah, he removed it. Very obvious what this little sleazeball is up to. And doesn't he look like a rat singer? Just look at his face. It's so incredibly frickin' sinister looking. He just has that evil, sick Dick Cheney look about him. Can't stand him. Anyway, let's move on to talk about his philosophy. By May of 2006, after settling into his new office, Ratzinger took the opportunity to lash out against European secularism and Islam in his book Without Roots, The West, Relativism, Christianity, Islam. In it, he wrote that the only solution to Europe's problems and the advance of Islam is Roman Catholicism. Doesn't that sound familiar? Very similar to the rhetoric used by his predecessor, the only solution to man's problems. Funny he should talk about radical Islam. Talk about calling the kettle black. Talk about throwing stones when you live in a glass house. Look at your own church's history, you piece of filth. Anyway, in September of that year, Benedict traveled home to Bavaria for a 6-day visit. There he discussed injecting Christianity, i.e. Catholicism, into the European Constitution, proposed by the European Union, of course, and talked with German President Horst Kohler about the dangers of Islamic penetration into German society. Ooh, he's really hung up on that Islam thing, isn't he? That's what, that's what someone does who has something to hide. When you've got an ugly past that you don't want the public to know about, you talk about someone else's ugly, or alleged, ugly, skeletons in their closet. He's got a lot in his to hide. So you got to distract attention away. Like the ADL likes to do. Anyway, but his most famous speech was a lecture at the University of Regensburg, where he quoted a Catholic Byzantine emperor, Manuel II, Paleologus, man, that's a tongue twister. Anyway, here's what he said. Show me just what Mohammed brought that was new, and there you will find things only evil and inhuman, such as his command to spread by the sword the faith he preached. Oh, man, this is unbelievable. Folks, you can bet that nobody holds a candle to Roman Catholicism when it comes to religious slaughterings, okay? So who is this man to point a finger at Muhammad? Now, was Islam a bloody conqueror, in its early history? Yeah, of course. Incredible massive bloodshed was done at the hand of Muslim armies. But this scumbag coming out and pointing a finger, you've got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me. Once again, nobody holds a candle to the papacy with its ugly, bloody history. So who's this scumbag to be talking? Anyway, Benedict was drawing his line in the sand. But that's interesting, folks, because, again, no religion on earth, as I said, knows more about bloodshed in the name of religion than Roman Catholicism. Benedict also visited in these early days, on his little world tour, Auschwitz. I guess he wanted to cover all the bases, looking like a humanitarian while seeking after despotic power. Auschwitz, you gotta be kidding. Anyway, on February 19th, 2007, the Vatican summoned Italian Prime Minister Romano Prodi and a contingent of senior Italian government officials. The topic was homosexual couples. He's not leaving any stone unturned here, is he? On the 23rd, Catholic World News reported, and I quote, the new Italian government, oh, I guess this is the name of the article, new Italian government would not require allies to support civil union bill. The article showed that Prodi had caved on the issue in order to gather enough support to return to office. In other words, he gave in to Vatican demands regarding homosexual marriages so he could be reelected. The Pope had flexed his muscle and thus had shown Prodi, and indeed the rest of the world, who really rules Italy. The Italian newspaper La Stampa brought this very point out when it stated, and I quote, Prodi's government dared to challenge the ecclesiastical hierarchy for the second time, and this time it has had its hands burned. Unbelievable, folks. Who's wagging who? The dog wagging the tail wagging the dog. You see the power that this scumbag is wielding in Italy. And as time goes on, he's going to extend that power, if he has his way, all across Europe and indeed all across the world, starting with Italy first and then moving out from there. This incident echoed the Vatican's past as Europe's kingmaker. The unifying political power that forged the Holy Roman Empire. Soon after, Benedict extended his reach into Italian politics even further by issuing his command to faithful followers, and this is what he said, vote Catholic. He told the Italian politicians on March 13th that they must not vote for laws that were against the Church's non-negotiable values. Short break, be right back. All right, folks, in the final segment here. I think I am going to wrap this up, actually. I don't know if I'm going to continue it into another show, but anyway, I'm just skipping over some stuff that isn't quite so important, but if you want the notes, once again, just email me. I'll send them off to you. This Pope, just like popes from the Dark Ages, and so much unlike his predecessor, I mean, he's really upping the ante far beyond what John Paul II ever did. He's literally called all other churches illegitimate. The only legitimate church is the Catholic Church, and the only way to salvation is through the Catholic Church. In mid-May of 2006, the Pope traveled to Brazil to open an assembly of the Latin American Bishops' Conference, not by invitation, but by personal choice. There he challenged the bishops to galvanize a continent-wide crusade against competing non-Catholic religions, or sects as he called them, such as North American evangelicals. Latino bishops jumped on the board, on the bandwagon, I should say, and began lobbying national governments for legislation to ban and obstruct non-Catholics from operating in Latin America. It's unbelievable. This is, again, a return to the Dark Ages. The visit illuminated Benedict's aims to reemerge Catholicism, not only in Europe, but, again, around the globe. This, folks, is so reminiscent of a quote from the May 1994 issue of Charisma magazine, a Christian publication. Listen to this quote. Stunned by the staggering growth of evangelical sects in Brazil, leaders of the Roman Catholic Church have threatened to launch a holy war against Protestants unless they stop leading people from the Catholic fold. At the 31st National Conference of the Bishops of Brazil, Bishop Bond called evangelicals a serious threat to the Vatican's influence in his country. We will declare a holy war. Don't doubt it, he said. The Catholic Church has a ponderous structure But when we move, we will smash anyone beneath us. Can you believe this? Absolutely astonishing. And this is what this current Pope is all about, smashing those who stand in our way, who oppose us. Don't convert others to your church. We want them to stay in ours, and we're going to convert you to our church. What a joke. What a flippin' joke. Folks, trash the whole thing. Trash the whole thing. Organized religion. If you want to stop the New World Order, abolish organized religion first. Start there, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, in late May of 2007, Pope Benedict prodded Catholics, it's time to evangelize. He spoke of the urgent need to relaunch missionary activity to meet the many grave challenges of our time, he said. He also called missionary work the Church's primary service to humanity today. Service? Oh, thank you for that service of forcing me to convert to your cult, twisting my arms and legs on the rack. Yeah, what the heck is this? The message was clear, folks. The Church's most important job is to convert the world. To that end, the Pope resurrected the Tridentine Mass, a Latin language ceremony codified in 1570. So now when you go, you can't even understand what's being said. He considers that a step forward. Of course, at the Vatican II Council in the 1960s, the Catholic Church, restricted use of the ultra-conservative Tridentine prayer book, which is peppered with references that make non-Catholics look substandard. He wants to, go back to that Dark Age type philosophy. The more inclusive modern Mass the Church has adopted in its place was seconded by hardcore Catholics, one of whom was a younger Joseph Ratzinger. He was actually in favor of the Vatican II new Mass, and now that he's Pope, he's turning it around, changing his position. But I guess that's how infallibility works, doesn't it? Change your mind completely from one day to the next, yet you're still infallible. What you say at any given moment is infallible. Doesn't matter that you contradict yourself the next day. Anyway, it's just so Orwellian. I'm just skipping through my notes to see if there's anything else important I want to cover here. Let's see. Benedict said that denominations outside Roman Catholicism are defective and that they're not full churches. They're not legitimate churches. Despite the fact that this teaching has created no little distress, it's nevertheless difficult to see how the title of church could possibly be attributed to them, said Benedict, implying that you can't even call them churches because they're not Roman Catholic. They don't recognize the primacy of the Vatican and the Pope himself. So, where is all of this leading, folks? Again, for those who know the history of the Vatican, there's only one place that it can lead: absolute totalitarian power, just as we had in the Dark Ages. Revival of the Inquisition, the Crusades, you name it. This is scary stuff. Religious intolerance has always been a hallmark of the papal system, folks. Nothing has changed, and I'm sure you can see that from the quotes that I've read. The America, which is a Catholic periodical, June 4th, 1941. Listen to what it said. They, Protestants, conveniently forgot that they separated from us, not we from them, and that it is for them to return in unity on Catholic terms, not for us to seek union with them. They haven't changed, folks. They always have wanted power. They still do. They look down their noses at other churches and demand that you conform. Anyway, I wanted to end off with this poem I wrote a number of years ago. It's called A Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. This sums it all up. He sits so proud on his papal throne, as men gaze on, thinking he's Christ's clone. With a look so pious, an adornment so fair, the people are stunned, all they do is stare. He claims He charms them with his speech, with words so carefully planned, to mend the gaping breach and regain the upper hand. They hail his talks of peace, of unity and love, not knowing that his sweet caress will lead to push and shove. So beware, all you governments and rulers of the globe, of the man who wears the mitre and the long white dangling robe. For what happened in past centuries, though many soon forget, will happen once again for sure when the great world stage is set. So there you have it, folks. What we're headed for is, in fact, a revival of the Dark Ages. And even the secularists that are pushing for the New World Order have no aversion to this. They're all too happy to share their power with the Pope because he's all for totalitarianism. The leader of the emerging New World Order might actually be the Pope himself. Who knows? Many globalist documents, including the protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, talk about a coming leader that will head up the world system of government. And so it may very well be him. And don't think that, oh no, Jews would never collaborate with the Pope. I got news for you. They have been all along. In the early 90s, the Vatican drafted up a concordat with Israel, the state of Israel, recognizing it. And, kissy-kissy back and forth. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You pick my nose, I'll pick yours. All that kind of stuff. No, the Vatican is very much in close cohesion with Israel. All globalist enterprises are. They have to be in order to advance their common cause. Even if they didn't like it, but clearly they do. They're all kissing cousins, but they have to make concessions to bring this about. All right, guys, that does conclude this show. Tomorrow, I'm going to see through it after a few minutes here. Call my guest, make sure he'll be on, so we'll catch you then.